r/AskReddit. Anesthesiologists. What are the best things people have said under the gas? Two of my fav. Both patients coming out of anesthesia. Am I in hell? I responded, no you're not. You're just in recovery. That sounds like something the devil would say. Count backwards from 100 to prove it. Or the one who stroked my unshaved arm while I was trying to keep him from pulling at his IV, and muttered you'd make such a great carpet. I love the implication that the devil can't count backwards. Why do you only shave one of your arms? It was enough for one carpet. I had to go under for ear surgery once. I thought it'd be funny if I asked, does anyone need anything while I'm out, right before I went under. I remember it kicking in way quicker than I thought it would, so I had to take my chance while I still had it. I yelled it but got a very confused look from everyone standing around me. Took a minute for me to realize I had accidentally yelled it while I was waking up from surgery. Oops. Ping. 8,000 milliseconds. The lag is real. When I got put under for a colonoscopy, I didn't really fall asleep during the countdown. I just looked at the nurse a bit confused and said I don't notice anything, and she smiled and squeezed my wrist and said just give it a moment. As soon as she said that I started fading out, and according to her the last thing I mumbled was, oh that's f***ed, you magic witch. Kind of a reverse story. Going under to get my appendix removed, they begin doing the countdown as they inject a hefty dose of propofol and fentanyl to put me out. I count down to 1 and then ask, now what? The surgeon looks at me and says, you are still awake. Man. You are fat, you know that. I said, you're just saying that because you think I won't remember. He said. Exactly. That's the last thing I remember. That must have been awkward when you woke up. I told him when I saw him a day later. He kinda chuckled and said he'd better watch what he says from now on. Had a similar experience with my appendectomy. Countdown from 10, hit 0, still just feeling pain from the appendix. Doctor goes, well, you seem to have a high drug tolerance. Sucks for you if you're a recreational user. Lol, that's the last thing I remember him saying to me. Oh, I was 15 at the time. Guessing much like your doc, he didn't expect me to remember that moment. When I was getting put out, I heard this cheesy jazz music in the operating room. I said, of course Dr. R listens to this garbage. Dr. R immediately appeared next to me looking none too thrilled. Then I went under. Did you die? I went under thinking I might. My dad works with that stuff. Funniest thing he's heard is, hey MR doctor? My ass itches and I'm too high to scratch. Edit. No, he didn't help. The dude passed out right after. Nurse anesthetist here. When I was in school, I was getting ready to get a lady off to sleep and going through my regular spiel. I had a mask on her face and I said nice big breaths as I pushed propofol. Right before she went out she said thanks, I just had them done. I looked at my preceptor, we looked at the circulator, and we all burst out laughing. I now say slow deep breaths instead. I love telling that story. That lady made all our days. My wife is an anesthesiologist and her best line from a patient is, this is better than meth. Reminds me of when I tried liquor for the first time with my parents as a teenager and I accidentally told them that I liked vodka better. When I was 9 and having jaw surgery, the surgeon was putting me under and said say bye to your mommy, and apparently 9-year-old me thought that meant they were going to kill me. My mother says I gave her a look of absolute terror and then passed out. My husband went under last year, and once he woke up, by our appearances he was as sober as a church mouse. Walking, asking serious questions of the doctor, apparently no issues at all. He remembered the procedure and described it to me in detail. I figured he just never went completely under. He was craving Chinese food, and nothing would do except for buffet, so we headed down and loaded up our first load of plates. Evidently, he actually woke up from the anesthesia at the buffet. As far as he remembers, he was put under and woke up in front of a plate of chicken teriyaki on a stick. Not an anesthesiologist, but when I went in for my gallbladder surgery the nurse was an old co-worker and I blurted out on the table I knew you'd see me naked before I was out. Glorious. I had a patient start a joke before surgery and finish it when they woke up without prompting. I can just imagine it going like, what do you call a guy with a rubber toe hours later, Roberto? What's the most important part of any good joke? Timing. Patient, when I was coming up from shoulder surgery on a pretty substantial dose of fentanyl, my wife told me that I looked at the head nurse and said, "Your boobs are spectacular, I want to see them." I have no memory of it, but apparently the wife was mortified, and the nurse thought it was hysterical. She also said it wasn't particularly unusual to get comments of that sort. Edit, wow, my first silver. I find it both hilarious and wholly appropriate that my first award and highest ranked comment is about busty nurses. I find it both hilarious and wholly appropriate that my first award and highest ranked comment is about busty nurses. I guess they are spectacular then. They are real. And they are spectacular. My wife is an anesthesiologist. When she was in fellowship she had a patient say they saw dicks dripping off the ceiling. Ketamine infusion? 100% yes. I've had them for pain, and dicks dripping off the ceiling isn't even the weirdest thing I've seen. Pokemon performing surgery on porn stars is probably weirder, and yes, that happened. To my eyes. While doing a ketamine infusion. I broke my hand tumbling once and had to get surgery. He goes to put the mask on my face and says this is oxygen. I cough as the mask goes on. He pulls the mask away and I said I trusted you. You lying f***. That's the last thing I remember. Oh man, when they put the mask on me they said the same thing. This is oxygen. The last thing I remember thinking is oxygen? Nah. Too many to count during my 15 years of practice. That's some good shit. Falling asleep mid-sentence. I want to have your babies. A 55-year-old woman to my medical student. You're really going to shove that whole thing up my ass? To the endoscopist right before a colonoscopy. Big or small, I love them all. 90-year-old woman talking to nurses about men. Do I need to take my underwear off? Teenager about to go into labor. I'm not sure how that happened. Another pregnant teenager. I don't want you to be too surprised by my tattoo. Conservative looking Asian man with a Pinocchio tattoo around his penis, with his penis as a nose. Where did all the American doctors go? Guy covered with swastikas to a room filled with Asian doctors and nurses. Had Pinocchio man been telling huge lies, or did he look like a truthful little fella? If it can't impress on its own, you gotta get a gimmick. I was having a broken wrist set and the doctor told me to count from 100. He told me afterward that I got to 50, stopped for about 5 minutes, started back up and finished. Had to turn you off and back on. I was given a relaxer prior to colonoscopy and was rolled into the room. Doctor asked me what I had done that weekend. I said I went to the MN State Fair. Oh, she says eat anything interesting. I said why don't you tell me? No laughter whatever in the room. And then I was out. I swear she gave an extra shove because I half woke up during the procedure and remember groaning. My cousin had a similar experience before his colonoscopy. They gave him the relaxer and he then started calling his gown his dress and kept trying to cover his butt because it's not time for his clothes up yet. Not anesthesia, but patient was heavily sedated in ICU. Nurse gave an enema. Half-conscious response. Honey, you know I don't like it that way. I have a similar story. Colonoscopy. Very prim and proper lady under sedation. As the scope was introduced, she exclaimed, "Oh. Darling, you said you wouldn't do that anymore." I went under for a nasal canal surgery and apparently after the surgery I was holding the nurse's hand and repeating "I love you, don't leave me" over and over. Not an anesthesiologist, but when my stepdad was going under for a surgery, he was almost out but at a sweet point that the doctor told my mom she could ask him anything and he wouldn't be able to help but answer truthfully. She asked, "Do you love me?" My stepdad replied, "You need to go on and get your little Yoda shoes." I'm pretty sure Yoda doesn't even wear shoes. I had surgery last week for the first time. Apparently, right after they gave me the drugs I started talking about how cute my boyfriend's butt is. I was telling this to 3 male doctors. Important information, the world must know. I had to take my mom to the hospital and while I was speaking to the doctor about her medical history, my mom was real insistent about them knowing her tennis elbow. Doctor, so is she on any medication? Mom, tennis elbow. Me, no, she's mom, tennis elbow. Me, she has tennis elbow. Doctor, I can tell. Mom, tennis elbow. When I was about to go out for surgery, they were strapping me down, and told me it was so that I don't fall off the table. My last words were, "It's okay, 5-second rule." This is actually something I supposedly said when I came out of my wisdom teeth surgery and woke up. My bones feel wet, can I have a napkin? I still wonder what I was thinking. Well, your bones are wet. Not under GA, but when I was giving birth I was pretty out of it. The radio was playing in the operating room, and Uncle Cracker came on. I apparently yelled, "I am not bringing my child into the world to this shit." They turned the radio off. Me coming to after getting wisdom teeth out. "So how long until the anesthetic kicks in?" "Oh, your surgery is already done." "Already? Man, that was fast. It's been 2 hours. Whoa, did I just time travel?" My brother went under and on his way out he said, "Holy f***, you are beautiful and I'm in love," to the nurse anesthetist.